Hey, instead Steve, please like and subscribe. Please click on the Deck Heroes icon, click on subscribe. It's 100% free. Blood in, blood out. And don't forget to click on the notifications just so you don't miss any amazing content. This, if you look to the top left, is why are 63% of young men single. I've got that lived experience. I'm in my 40s. I live in the bustling city of London, which is absolutely amazing. I've lived an active life. I believe I have all the answers, but we will see. I've also got a degree in psychology and a master's degree in economics. Anyway, let's go.
3% of men in the United States are single, in comparison to 34% of their female counterparts. And it's not just relationships. Men aren't really having sex altogether. In a study conducted on males ages 18 to 24, sexual inactivity increased from 19 to 31% between the years of 2002 and 2018. But before I get into the 6 points as to why this is happening, let's take a 50,000-foot view of the situation and look at why people do or don't do certain things. Neurologically speaking, every action that humans take is either to pursue pleasure or avoid pain. So if a large group, particularly men in this situation, are abstaining from relationships, it's probably because they're chasing something that they perceive to be as better, or avoiding the stress and challenges that relationships can bring. To zoom back in, we need to explore the societal motivators that are pushing 63% of men to remain single. So in this video, I'm going to go over the 6 key factors that are contributing to this overall trend. Let's get into it. Which brings me to my first point.
Listen, I'm not even going to go into this pleasure or pain. I'm not sure why it's been introduced, but I guess we'll find out in due course. But I'm going to tell you right from the get-go. And I think this is absolutely essential in comparison to the similar videos I've seen on the same thing. As a man, we need to take ownership. We need to take ownership about what works and what isn't working. It's not because of outside influences or the world why we can't flaming do things. Okay, so we look to ourselves. Are we on our A game? How is our kind of hair? How's our appearance? Are we looking after our health? Are we smelling good? Are we kind of mindful of our social interactions? Is that a strength? It's going to need to be a strength if you're going to speak to somebody. Are we focused on career in the early years so you can build up that kind of, success in order to attract ladies? Because ladies want their future life, if you happen to have children with them, to be relatively comfortable and, relatively affluent. These are the realities. So if you don't focus on those things, then that's the reason why you're going to struggle. It's not anything else. So but basically what I'm saying is there may be many reasons why people are single. And listen, I know that I haven't covered everything. I know. I'm talking about the people who are mostly in the middle in terms of they could be, you know what I mean? They could be ultra kind of successful with ladies. I'm not talking about the ones who've got particular specific challenges. The ones who could be. Put these excuses aside and then you will be. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. And that's where I'm coming from. That's where my mindset is. So let's go.
Start with something that's been quietly affecting millions of men for years: low testosterone. Now, testosterone isn't just about muscles and aggression. It's critical for sex drive, mood, and overall energy. Imagine a young man in his early 20s who, despite being physically healthy, struggles with low energy and a lack of interest in intimacy. He might not recognize that his testosterone levels are at an all-time low. And it's not just him. This is happening to millions of men across the country. Studies have shown that testosterone levels in men have been declining for decades, with a significant drop observed in men as young as 25. And low testosterone can lead to decreased libido, contributing to the overall lack of interest in sexual intimacy. Low testosterone levels can also significantly impact men's mental health, affecting mood, cognition, and overall psychological well-being. Testosterone is a hormone that plays crucial levels in lots of bodily functions, and when testosterone levels drop, it can lead to a wide array of negative impacts. Some of these things, from a psychological level, I'm going to outline here. Depression is one of the most common psychological issues when it comes to low testosterone levels in men. Study after study has shown that men with low testosterone levels tend to experience massive symptoms of depression. This includes persistent sadness, loss of interest in their activities, and feelings of hopelessness. And if you play this out over a long enough time horizon, well, this will absolutely impact men's self-esteem and overall confidence. When testosterone levels in men drop, they tend to experience a decrease in self-worth, and this can lead to feelings of inadequacy or further feelings of insecurity. And this will absolutely impact their ability to go out and have social interactions, and it definitely stifles their willingness to pursue new opportunities. And due to the low self-esteem and lower confidence as they continue to withdraw, it's going to further exacerbate the feelings of isolation and loneliness.
As a man with that lived experience and also that qualification, I would say you got to look at whether low testosterone is producing outcomes. You know what I mean? That the low testosterone just means you're less kind of sexually driven, you're less looking for social engagements and things like that. Whether that's the cause or if it's that in reverse. Say if you hardly ever go out, you hardly ever see any women, then why would that testosterone be firing up? You know what I mean? You are kind of in that lower state of necessity for sexual drive. Just as a case in point, say if you're going out and doing the naughty 5 times a day, do you reckon your testosterone's quite high? Or say if you haven't had it for 6 odd months, do you reckon you might kind of get that lower trajectory on the way down? Gosh, it ain't rocket science. The things I think a man needs to be looking at, and I was going to do a separate video on it, but I'm going to mention something along those lines. Look at your sugar intake. Look at the quality of your food. Look at the sugar intake and the fruits that you're eating. Say, for instance, you're eating really good food, which isn't kind of in concentrated fats, and you do the exercise. Might that be better than eating like crap all day and trying to balance it out with something else, and maybe you're kind of somewhere in the middle? I would say so. But anyway, let's go from there.
Being single. We have to talk about the impact of current culture in society with an abundance of fatherless homes. We've heard of women having daddy issues, but we don't necessarily talk about the impact of men growing up without a father and how that can lead to further issues. Without a strong male role model, many men struggle to develop confidence and the social skills that are required for them to navigate a intimate relationship. Think about a young boy growing up without his father around. He might be raised by a super strong, incredibly caregiving and nurturing mother, but there's still a void in his understanding of what it means to be a man in a relationship. And this lack of guidance can manifest itself as insecurity or complete avoidance, or more importantly, driving super toxic dynamics within relationships that they cultivate, especially if his interaction with his mother was, well, volatile. Fatherless homes have been linked to a range of social challenges, including the difficulty of forming healthy romantic relationships. Without the tools and examples provided by a healthy father figure, men will find themselves unequipped to engage in meaningful relationships. And this is because fathers play a crucial role in the development of a healthy masculine in their sons. And this influence is multifaceted, encompassing direct behavioral modeling, emotional support, and the provision of a secure environment where boys can explore their identity and learn the strong form of a healthy masculine. Through everyday interactions, boys learn about assertiveness, problem solving, and how to balance traditionally masculine traits like strength with emotional intelligence. And for fathers who model healthy masculinity, demonstrating respect, empathy, and responsible behavior, equip their sons with the tools to navigate moving into manhood in a healthy way. Now, in another really important note, especially around cultural standards and the pressure that we put on men, specifically when it comes to...
Okay, I haven't seen the video from this point. I only watched like the first kind of just above 5 minutes, so I'm kind of going into new ground myself. Very interesting that she's talking about this, the lack of a strong male role model. If you're raised by, say, somebody where the male or the dad is excluded, then how does that young boy grow up knowing what it is to be a male? You know what I mean? And what's a healthy masculinity? And she mentioned about, your assertiveness and your strengths, and I say really about what your traditional role is in society. I think that can be overlooked if you've never had to live it. I think women will obviously know their traditional roles in society, but how can they kind of relate to what their male role is? In the same way, how would a male man know specifically how to raise a young girl and say, okay, well, when you're going through your teenage girly years, this is what you need to think about when you haven't lived that experience. And it's the same for a woman who's never lived that male experience. So where's he going to find out? Where's he going to find it out? He's going to find it out from other boys his age, or not at all. Or he may well struggle is the answer. And he may well struggle into manhood himself and never actually work things out. And I think that's a real, one of the real problems. If you're only focused on getting that kind of subjective kind of point of view on something without that lived experience, but your role in society and how you assessed and your success in society and success in the relationships is based on an objective kind of perspective. You know what I mean? If you lose your job right now, subjectively you may have given answers, but objectively you need to have covered it. You need to have had a backup plan. You need to have thought ahead before it happened. You need to have thought ahead so it didn't happen. That's a male role. Just as a quick aside, say if you're in a relationship right now, whoever's in a relationship right now watching this, you're a man. Your woman loses her job. I mean, what's going to happen? You got to try and support her. Eventually she'll find something. A couple of days go by. Eventually she'll find something. Just give her that positive encouragement. You know her strengths. You know what I mean? So, you just have to make her feel a little bit better. Just give her that positive encouragement. A couple of weeks go by the same. A couple of months go by. Listen, as long as she's trying and doing what she can, your role is just to maintain, that positive happiness. You know what I mean? More or less ticking over as before. Let's flip that right now. This is all talking about like male role models and what you need to prepare these guys for as kids going into men. Now, you are the one, men, you are the ones that have lost your job. Now, no matter what relationship you are in, You are expected to contribute towards the lifestyle of the lady that you're with most of the time. You're meant to be taking her to nice places, making her feel valued and respected. She is not thinking along the lines of any situation where she needs to finance your life, mister. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't really expect her to. So there's either going to be two things. You're either so withdrawn that you can't actually afford to go out and do things together as a couple because you're out of work right now, which is the best of the worst in this situation. But even worse than that in her mind would be if she has to finance you for any period of time just so you can keep that relationship ticking over. You, for however many days you are out of work, your relationship's going from 100, 99, 98, 97. You better get that job. And you better kind of be looking at those kind of positive engagements, which makes it likely that your next move will kind of get you back to where you were. But you still would have done some damage in that you've unsettled the relationship by being out of work. There's two different kind of things in play. Basically, what I'm saying is you can't just raise a young man in order to kind of have blinkers on about what his role is in society. His role is going to have to be as a provider. His role is going to have to be of having that objective thought. Nobody's going to bail him out. He's the man. And he shouldn't even expect himself to be bailed out necessarily. He's got to be putting in those objectively, I need to kind of make sure I've got this money on the side. Objectively, I need to be going for these types of careers. Objectively, I need to be kind of applying myself in my education and in my work in order to kind of move my life forward so I can sustain a future family. And that needs to be a conversation that is had and understood by men. And by this young man this young boy who's going to become a man. And that's not necessarily going to be happen by somebody who doesn't have that lived experience. It's just not going to happen. It's not necessarily going to happen. It's rarely going to happen. You know what I mean? I can only play to the majority, and I better believe that's hardly ever going to happen. She mentioned something about if you're raised by a strong woman, a strong mother. That's making a lot of assumptions. Not to say they're not out there, but everything's on a spectrum. So yeah, fair enough. The ones who are strongest, they're going to do a better job than the ones who are weaker. But what happens to all those ones on the weak side of that dividing line, wherever it is? What happens to all those kids? They end up in the 63%. Anyway, let's go forward.
Their emotions is that fathers who are present and emotionally available for their sons can help them learn to work through their emotions as they continue to grow. And this counters the cultural pressure for boys and men to continue to suppress their emotional state. And this can lead to issues like overall aggression or emotional detachment later on in life. Now, lastly, especially as a clinical psych student, I have to touch on the importance of rough and tumble play. This is that fathers who are present and moving into manhood in a healthy way. Now, in another really important note, especially around cultural standards and the pressure that we put on men, specifically when it comes to their emotions, is that fathers who are present and emotionally available for their sons can help them learn to work through their emotions as they continue to grow. And this counters the cultural pressure for boys and men to continue to suppress their emotional state. And this can lead to issues like overall aggression or emotional detachment later on.
Right. That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting assumption that she's making. Again, this is about a lived experience thing. I think what she was saying was that the dads can help with their kind of emotional management of the child. But I think she was going down the lines of that by helping him to express his emotions. That is a woman kind of thinking that her point of view or their standpoint is correct and assuming, wanting to be positive, that's also going to be the male standpoint. Let's contrast that with a little bit of kind of lived experience. And I'm sure it applies to 99.99999% of men. You're playing as a young boy. You fall over. You do something stupid. You scratch your leg. What does your mum do? This varies, I must admit. More likely, give you a hug, just wipe it down and, lick her finger, put it on the cut. Oh, you'll be okay. It's a little boo-boo. You go on, just go on, but you'll be okay. Make sure you're more careful next time. How's that going to contrast with the experience of the dad? Is he going to kind of be more emotionally in tune with that young boy? It might well be. Depends on the age of the kid, really. The older the kid, though. The older the child, is it going to be, what the hell were you doing? What were you doing? Just maybe be more careful. You nearly knocked over this. You nearly did that. You nearly scratched his knee. I told you not to do it. There's some glass on the floor over there. Think about it, young boy. I keep on telling you. I'm not going to tell you again. Completely different. Which one was more emotionally? Listen, men have got their role. And from those lived experience, yeah, in the moment, the more emotionally involved kind of approach will help him, within that millisecond. And going forwards, that young boy already knows blame self. Blame self. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's the reality thing. Blame self. Take some accountability. Think ahead for the future next time. What's the better situation? Anyway, let's go forward.
Life. Now, lastly, especially as a clinical psych student, I have to touch on the importance of rough and tumble play. This is a form of physical interaction that often occurs between father and son, and this plays a significant role in the overall development of social and emotional skills. It helps boys learn to regulate their emotions as they go through play, build restraint around their impulses, and understand boundaries while cultivating overall levels of resilience. During rough and tumble play, boys learn the difference between playful aggression and real aggression, and this again helps them to develop overall self-control and also understand other people's social cues. So without this, you can see how the development and manifestation of a man's aggression without the understanding of when is too much can lead to negative consequences, not just for them, but for the people around them. So it may not feel like it's that important when it comes to why men are single. I think it's really important to discuss the absent father issue that we have in our current culture. Without a father or a positive male role model, men don't get the skills or understanding of how to navigate things, especially interpersonally. We learn, all of our behavior is learned, and we tend to learn it by observing our parents, specifically at a very young age. And fathers are important when it comes to...
Now, I was just trying to think about what was the actual pointer she was trying to make of that rough and tumble play. I don't really want to rewind it. I'm just trying to process it on the first kind of take on what she was saying. I think she was saying by engaging in rough and tumble play through lived experience, we know what our boundaries are in relation to aggression, maybe, or that kind of physical methods of interacting with others. Interesting. I don't know if it produces any significant... I mean, let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. I'm genuinely interested. I don't really have a fixed position, but I never really thought of it from that point of view. Rough and tumble play just is what it is, just because you've got a couple of like-minded people just doing the same thing at the same time, and regardless of whether parents are there or not, if you're a rough and tumble kind of person, then that's exactly what you do. And I think it's more about reasons that you want to maintain friendships and not fall into fights with your friends, which most definitely can happen as a young boy. I was talking about primary school. If you're doing that rough and tumble play, you will accidentally, slap somebody or something along the lines, and then your friendship's on the line. And I say about respecting those friendship boundaries, why that changes, I'm pretty sure that's as big as or as small as it gets. Let's broaden it out there. Let's try and make it a point of what it is. You've got rough and tumble play. That's probably going to be with a dad, which would encourage that kind of thing or allow it or enable it a little bit more. Let's just say the child grows up in a purely one-parent household, which is probably tends to be the mom. Instead of having that rough and tumble play, he's playing with a doll's house. He's playing with a doll's house. Say if that rough and tumble play is playing football, whether it's like soccer in the UK or it's kind of American football in the States, but instead of doing that, he's playing the doll's house. Now, when he does that type of thing in the schoolyard, playing with some dolls, and I'm not talking about sexuality, I'm talking about that specific thing, how do we think that's going to pan out? How's that going to be in terms of his social engagements with his peer group? And how do we think that's going to affect his mental health? And the reason why I think this is because I saw it in a different video. I had to kind of think about it, and I'm kind of going to mention it now. How do we think that's going to work out? Might that be just one specific example of many examples, how this young man is just not prepared for life in terms of kind of relationships? It's too early to bring it to the relationships, but yeah, at some point, dad will probably tell you, listen, this is what you need to do in order to chat somebody up. Woman's never had to do it. You know what I mean? You might need to be respectful of her. You need to take care of her. You need to express an interest. These are mistakes I've made. Make sure you smell good. Make sure you look good. Make sure you tell her she looks nice, all that kind of stuff. So this is stuff which is not exclusive to men, but from the lived experience, we'll go into it knowing what the hell we're talking. Let's go forward to it.
modeling how to treat a partner with respect, and vice versa for women, but the conversation today is about men. How do you manage your emotions? How do you address conflict? How do you communicate effectively? And when boys grow up without witnessing these dynamics, it can manifest as dysfunctional, but the problem is they just were never taught how. And if we look into the psychological impacts around this, I'm sure you've heard of attachment styles, but if you haven't, I'm just going to cover the theory here. Attachment theory suggests that children form their initial understanding of relationships through their interactions with their primary caregivers. So when a father is absent, it can disrupt the secure attachment that is required for developing both trust and confidence in the pursuit of a relationship. So for the children who are raised without a father figure, and this is for both parents as well, so when we look at the problem with boys being raised without fathers, we can see how this can lead to them developing an insecure attachment style. And this will absolutely exacerbate problems and challenges when it comes to creating a stable and healthy romantic bond, especially if they build a fear or core belief that amplifies anxiety around the experience of abandonment. And this will lead to a reluctance to engage and absolutely perpetuate trust issues. Now, the last part here around the importance of a father figure, I have to touch.
I say insecure attachment style. There could be that example about never growing up in a two-parent household, and you kind of in some ways damaged by the absence. Is it that? Just in common sense, like lived experience. There's plenty of people who come through that and they're absolutely fine. And why would that be? If we did a study right now, do we think that in those kind of effective co-parenting situations, which are not just tokenistic, that most of those kids will probably do better than the ones who have only one parent, and if there's any kind of antagonism with that one parent against the other person, then then the first example is probably doing significantly better than the second. That's where I think the focus needs to be. You know what I mean? About whether that other parent is being demonized and there's only kind of one perspective. So it can either be that there's one parent which tends to be the mom, and she's got a daughter, and she's effectively teaching that daughter that the man is the worst person in the world, right? I'm not saying in every case, but I'm just saying where there's examples, and those people will not really be inclined to rush into a relationship with a man going forwards. Makes sense, right? So they'll be very suspicious and they've learnt these toxic traits. Or it could be a boy who's been taught to alienate his dad. The caregiver wants to have all that love for themselves, so they alienate the other parent. Then when that boy's looking to himself in terms of who he is, and he can't get it from the other half of who he is, aka his dad, then that can create some problems. And he's getting into that kind of habit of emotional thinking instead of objective thinking, which is not going to serve him later in life in terms of that traditional role. He's going to be an emotional man where his responsibility or his life path is going to lead for him to need to be more of an objective thinker in addition to that. Anyways, go forward.
On the self-concept and what it means to be a man. The absence of a father can lead to complete confusion around gender roles and self-identity. Boys may struggle and tend to understand what it means to be a man, which can lead to insecurity or overcompensation in their adult life. And the overcompensation complex is either hyper-masculine behaviors that can be incredibly toxic, or complete passivity in relationships, which can also be toxic. And this is because they don't have the skill set or tools to understand how to balance and navigate and validate their natural aggression when it comes to their behavior, and also have the emotional intelligence and skills to communicate around how their partner's needs need to be met, as well as validating their own. And as we can guess here, this is going to lead to overall amplifications of adversarial interactions and not having the ability to find resolution within those conflicts. And this over time as a pattern will lead to up and down, a roller coaster of chaos when it comes to trying to engage with something akin to long-term commitment without having the skills to actually navigate that terrain. Which brings me to my next point. We have to talk.
I think she made a lot of good points, but I just think that there's, say, on the emotional side of things, you've got the objective and you've got the emotional. On the emotional, we're just trying to take care of somebody in the moment. Then you're really more inclined, I'm not saying every case, but if you're taking somebody's emotional needs, you're trying to take that pain away, really you're going to overlook the problems. You want them to be overlooked and forgotten. You know what I mean? You're going to distract you, scratch your knee again, you're playing the part. Oh, what's that over there? You rub the knee and, oh, doesn't it feel better now? Okay, let's go and play. You've overlooked what the problem is, and it's going to happen again. Yeah, and of course, on the other side, I say with the more objective thought, as I said in the example where you scratch your knee, and no, make sure you're kind of more careful of others, careful of the glass. You've done it before. You're being too reckless. And I've told you, you know what I mean. Just be more mindful. And so you need that objective thought. In the ideal situation, guess what? You need both. But I genuinely do think for boys, given their kind of life path of masculinity, it's just better to have primary care from the dad. That's my point of view. And everybody's entitled to their own. And for girls, probably primary care with their mum. Best scenario, both again. So think about your life partners, about their suitability. Anyway, let's go forwards.
A little bit about feminism. The feminist movement in itself has absolutely reshaped the gender dynamics within our culture, and this has had a complex and profound impact on men's interactions in romantic relationships. While the movement has largely focused on promoting gender equality and overall the empowerment of women, which was and is incredibly important, it has also led to shifts and consequences with how men show up, behave, and find stability within relationship or in society. And this is because the feminist movement went to challenge the historical gender norms, which has led to extended pressure for men to engage in more egalitarian relationships. And for men, this can create some discomfort, especially those who were socialized and raised under more traditional values and those historic views of masculinity. And this meaning, tactically, that they were the primary breadwinners within the dynamic of their relationship and the key decision maker when it came to moving forward with the long-term plans within that relationship. But as women gain more education and more economic independence, pairing that with some levels of more assertiveness, or as men would say, masculine women, men feel uncertain of how they fit into this new dynamic. Not all men, but some men. And this can lead to overall restraint or hesitancy when it comes to engaging in any type of relationship. Because these traditional markers of masculinity, as far as financial provision and making decisions, are being redefined and challenged regularly, this can lead to a lot of confusion and overall insecurity when it comes to men, especially their courage and confidence in pursuing relationships. Now, we also have to talk about the increased expectation that we've put on men.
Okay, well, the one thing I did want to mention is, I don't know if it's about the traditional roles and values versus the kind of feminism as such, which are just kind of, I know, kind of grouping things together, but and the confusion that leads from it. For me, confusion is led by traditional feminism is about equality between the sexes, and men have bought into that. I'm not talking about every single man in the world, and any kind of statements I'm talking about today is either my own opinions or the ones where I believe it's about at least 50%. Right, so we buy into this idea of 50-50, but then it's about, well, is this confusion in the exceptions? Confusions in the exceptions. So, okay, yeah, but it's 50-50, 100% down the road. Everybody, you look around the office, and I work in housing, most of my managers, I'm a manager, but most of the managers and the top management have only ever really been ladies. You know what I mean? So maybe that's anyway. So that is what it is. But anyway, just assume that beyond housing, we're in a 50-50 overall situation across sectors. But then there's the exceptions, which is where the confusion. Oh, but no, but I still expect you to pay for all the dates. Oh, still expect you to do this. I still expect you to open the doors. I still expect you to kind of do all the heavy lifting. It's like, and I'm not saying there's an issue. All I'm saying is you can't just have everything on your own terms. It's either equal or it ain't. You either need my help or you don't. You know what I mean? And you can't have these bullshit exceptions, basically, without there being confusion. It's a very emotive subject. This is something that I've obviously had a lifetime experience. I'm in my 40s. And a lot to, this is a very important video, and it's going to touch a lot of people. And I say, I just want to impart the information I think that you guys need to hear, and say if anybody comes in and says in the comments, well, actually, yeah, this is right, or maybe I've got something wrong, you can structure it out, absolutely right. And if you think, oh no, this is something absolutely key in relation to a point that I've said or they've said, positive or kind of left or right, and you think, okay, actually, if we could build it by that, absolutely great, because the whole point of this thing is to move the people who need to know, move their lives forwards. And I say, especially the things that we've talked about, there's a lot of men out there who have not had those male role models, and they're kind of struggling with elements of their life, and some of them not even know why. It's because they don't know their role in masculinity, they don't know their role in society, or people are trying to pretend that they don't have a role. They're at the same time saying, well, actually, yes, you do. The answer to that one is, well, yes, you do. And from early on, really, they should have been preparing you in readiness for that role. So yes, you do need to be a provider. You do need to be successful in your career. You do need to have that autonomy in your own financial stability. So don't throw it away on other things until you can. When you're financially stable and you've got that excess money to burn, okay, well, fair enough. That might not be in your teens, newsflash. That might not be, I'm talking to the men here, that might not be in your early 20s. And for others, maybe it will. They've got some rich kind of benefactor, you know, mom and dad or grandpa or grandma, whatever it is. Life ain't fair, but you got to work towards it. And these are the kind of things I'm going to be talking maybe later in this video, maybe in parts, probably going to be another 2 parts, or maybe in a separate standalone video on my own. I've been thinking to do something along those lines anyway, in different ways. So anyway, not a bad video so far. I hope you're enjoying it. Lots of content. Please like, subscribe. Dennis Stephen. I am out.